So we had a little switch up in the scheduling. I'm honestly going to see it as an upgrade, right? So our originally planned topic we discussed last month, but I can promise you that today's webinar is going to be a good one. So I appreciate you guys being here as always. I met Kimberly and Mackey years ago when she spoke at our Houston management group. Um, Wait, I'm sorry. Now I'm letting people in and doing intros. This is poor planning on my part, y'all. Um, I met her years ago, and within the first like 10 minutes, she had cursed, which I loved. And I was like, I need to be friends with her. And now here we are, friends all these years later. So Kim is a wealth of knowledge because she's done a million things. She's a former veterinary practice manager, a current CVPM. She's also a former parole officer, which makes for some incredible storytelling and surprisingly relatable traits between being a parole officer and a practice manager. So these days, when she's not speaking or consulting through her Candid approach at consulting firm, she's manning a dressage horse barn, right? Those horses that dance. So really, like, is there anything she hasn't done? She's a lot of fun, y'all. Um, Between her life experiences, her vet med experiences, I know that today's presentation on leadership lessons learned the hard way is going to be insightful and entertaining. So please, yay, welcome, Kim. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, once I met you too, I knew my life was not going to be fulfilled unless we were friends. So
I love that for us.
perfect. Yes. So one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this kind of stuff is because no one talks about it. There's like the taboo topics that people don't want to talk about, and communicating and leading people is not taboo, but the hard stuff that's behind the scenes that people experience every day in their job, we don't talk about enough. So that is basically what we're going to talk about and how to deal with that kind of stuff. I started out as a parole agent years ago, and I was a parole agent for 10 years. And then I got promoted to being a supervisor there. No one sat me down and said, this is how you deal with people. They said, this is what the report you have to do. This is what we want from the people that you supervise. And this is how fast you have to get it. No one said how you deal with the problems that come along with people, meaning how you deal with someone that doesn't do the work, how you deal with somebody that's not motivated to do the work, how you deal with somebody that might have a bias or a different opinion than you do, and how you deal with those people in a way that makes your life a little bit easier and make sure the job gets done. I was a veterinary receptionist for probably 5 or 6 years before I got promoted to a practice manager. There's a whole story between that because that's not a lot of time to be in the vet med world, but I was managing people and I got pushed into doing a practice manager job for a doctor that just bought a practice. And as you know, for someone that just bought a practice, it's chaos. And I was not trained any part on how to deal with the people in that area. And it wasn't lack of my owner not knowing what to do or how to do it. She did coach me along the way, but it's not as easy when you're the owner of practice with all these responsibilities. And she was a doctor also, which a lot of owners are. And then trying to teach me how to lead people. She did as well as she could have, and she's taught me a lot of things over the years. But some of the things that I've learned over the years that the hard parts are hard to talk about. So in my 30 years in law enforcement, I'm going to really, really show you who I am now, but really not. So I was sent to anger management classes in probably the first 5 years of me being a parole agent, basically because I am very vocal and candid in what I say. And back then, that wasn't something that people admired or thought was needed. I have been accused of sexual harassment. I have been accused of racial disparity. All were unfounded, but nobody talks about that kind of stuff that goes on there. And what I learned throughout the years of me in these fields is that I wasn't taught how to lead. So therefore, I avoided the uncomfortable conversations. I avoided the way that people made me feel. And therefore, I had some issues that I had to deal with that I had no way of knowing how to deal with them. So that's the hard parts that I kind of grew up with. And hopefully, you never have to experience some of the things that I've experienced with supervising people. But we need to try to learn and move forward from that. And that's what I've done over the 30 years of my careers, is trying to get people to understand that you need to be more open and you need to deal with problems before they get 10 times worse. If I would have dealt with some of the issues when they first started, and instead of trying to be nice or um, not be uncomfortable with things, then they might have not have turned out the way they had, and I might not have had the issues that I've had throughout my years as supervising, leading, and managing people. So the first lesson I want to talk about is being nice isn't the same as being kind. When you're trying to be nice to people that work for you or on your team, you're avoiding the discomfort that comes along with some of the issues that are out there. It's not I'm not trying to teach you about theory, or I'm teaching you about the real part of leadership. No one trains you how to lead people. So they promote you because you're good at your job, you work hard, and that want to do that job. Sometimes you don't want to do the job, but you get promoted anyway. But you're not saying what really needs to be said, or you soften the message and you're hoping it fixes itself. And then you're protecting those feelings in the moment. And I think as in society and leadership in general is that we try to make everything better, especially in the vet world. I found it that we try to not hurt people's feelings, make them feel okay about it. If they're not doing their job, you're like, oh, that's okay. We're going to go forward from here. We're going to move forward from this. Whereas in law enforcement, if the parolees weren't doing their job, meaning staying out of trouble and not committing any more crimes, I didn't have to be nice to them really, because I had a job to do where it was to protect society. So I was nice to them, meaning in a friendly overall system, but me sending them back to jail really isn't a nice thing, but that's what they deserved at the time. So you really have to not think about what you're doing to that specific person, but you really have to think of it as, how am I going to lead them that they're going to do a better job, and I'm going to be okay with that. So the reality is that, oh, wrong way. There we go. So the first thing we want to talk about is, I came up with this little framework. It's say it, own it, and then do something about it. So your say it part is kind as being clear even when it's uncomfortable. So you don't want to be nice, you want to be kind, and you want it to be clear, and you want to make sure that you say it. You need to say what needs to be said. You need to be honest about your expectations. A lot of times people in leadership think they say it, but they don't really say what they actually mean. And therefore it creates an issue with trying to understand, because we all know perception is kind of, actually, Megan, I can't see the chat because I don't know. I messed that up. So if there's questions in the chat.
You're fine so far. I got you.
So if you trying to say it, you want to make sure that you're respecting someone enough to not let them fail silently. Which really, when I heard that, somebody said that to me, and that really hit home for me, because a lot of times, because I didn't say it when it needed to be said, they failed again. So whatever that was that they weren't doing, I said it nicely, and therefore they still proceeded to fail silently because I didn't say it. And I didn't make sure that they knew what I was saying and that I was honest about what my expectations were. So a lot of times we don't specifically say what we think they're doing, especially with toxic employees. A lot of times is that, they're toxic. In your practice, you have those people that are toxic to everybody else. And that behavior is not acceptable. And yet, when you go to talk to them about it, you don't say it candidly so that they hear exactly what they're doing. So you're not directly telling them what the behavior is that isn't right or it won't be accepted. If a team member if they're underperforming, sorry, what actually happens if you don't say it and you're nice about it is that they don't improve, the team notices, your standards drop, because we all know in practices that when we see one person doing something wrong, and somebody else has to pick up the slack, then you're showing that that behavior is okay. And then other people might consider that if they don't do it, somebody else is going to pick it up and then they don't have to do it. So then it's kind of like an avalanche. It goes down and people continue to do it. In the government, we always had a thing where the underperformed got promoted and the ones that did their jobs and performed well got nothing. They just got more work. So we see that everywhere, right? In the vet world, you can see it happening with technicians, with receptionists. If there's one that doesn't do it, somebody else gets to do it. And then the one has less work and the other one has more work. And then you create this culture that nobody's really getting the work they deserve or the discipline or the punishment that they should have for not doing things. So it can get very convoluted. So lesson 2 is clarity. It's not natural, it's learned, it's practiced, and it's often avoided. When we're clear with somebody about what they're not doing or what they're doing, then it becomes a learned behavior that you're going to say that more and more, and they're going to appreciate that. It's not, the breakdown isn't about the effort, it's about the lack of clarity. You give them vague expectations. You're hinting at something instead of just stating it very out. One of the things over the years that people have told me is and why I named my business that is I'm very candid. I'm going to tell you like it is. Now, I wasn't like that all the time. It took me years to learn how to cultivate that and how to learn how to be clear and not be vague about what I'm trying to say. Does it make me uncomfortable? Sometimes. One of the instances we had to deal with I had to deal with a veterinarian who had body odor. Now, not an easy topic to talk about, right? You don't want to talk about how someone else smells. But this was a doctor that was going into rooms with people, in small rooms with people. And she also had, and I'm not sure if you're not aware of this, sometimes with mental illness, if they're in a episode where they're getting more stressed and having more issues, their personal hygiene declines. So this was an issue where not only am I talking about their body odor, but I'm also talking about their mental illness. So I had to make sure that I said what I needed to say and that I said it clearly. Because if I didn't, there was 2 issues that were going to balance there. I was going to have an issue of they were going to be embarrassed by what I was talking about because I'm talking about body odor. And then they're also going to be embarrassed because they know that their mental illness is declining. And now they're afraid for what might happen to their job because now I know that there's another issue going on. So I had to be really specific in what we talked about and had to be really clear about it. And then I also had to have that little bit of empathy that went along with it and saying that I knew that something was going on mentally and that we had resources for them if that was the issue and if they needed help with that. So that's not an easy conversation to have with anyone, especially with a doctor that's been around for years and had a lot of experience, and we knew that there was something going on. It actually worked out really well, but it took me being very clear on what it was and not trying to be just nice, I was trying to be kind and move past that. So that's a hard thing to do. Um, you don't want to you want to make sure that clear is kind and avoiding it isn't. Because if I avoided that whole incident, if I avoided the body odor, if I had avoided not talking to her at all, then it could have gotten worse. And she would have been in a worse position than she already was. Um,
So Kim,
I
real quick,
what
not to put you on the spot, but can you like some sentences that you use just so that we can hear what it actually sounds like? Because it's terrifying, right?
Yes, it is. So when I went into the conversation with her, one of the biggest things that I asked her starting off is in this helps with all types of people. I did this a lot with criminals and with my staff at the hospital is the first, you don't want to ask yes or no questions. We all know that. But what I asked her was, are you having issues that you need help with? And then that opened the door because we had that rapport. If you don't have that rapport before this conversation, then the straightforwardness would look like, listen, I've been having some complaints about body odor and that you are declining in your personal hygiene. And I did say that to her eventually after she opened up a little bit that she was having issues. Um, and I said, your body odor has been increasing in that your personal hygiene has been decreasing. So we need to find out what's going on, and we need you to make sure that you shower every day, that you use deodorant. And you specifically have to say that. You can't just say your personal hygiene is going down, you need to fix it. Because to someone else, that personal hygiene comment might not mean that you smell, right? They might think, oh, my hair's not cut. My clothes are dirty. So you have to be really specific on that. And a lot of people think that it is hard to do, but you're helping them. And that's what you have to put in your mindset is that I am not doing this to be unkind. I'm doing this to be kind. Because what happens if you don't say anything is more people start talking about it. You lose clients. You might even have some clients that are candid and upfront, and they might say right off the bat, like, wow, you really stink in here. And then you have embarrassment that the doctor goes through. So that was basically the conversation that we had. It took, I have to say though, because it goes along with mental illness. Um, Sorry, I just got this odd thing too, because of criminal justice background. A lot of times with sex offenders, when they are reoffending, their personal hygiene goes downhill too. So mental health goes hand in hand. You also have to be very aware, though, you can't just have that conversation and then not follow up, which is the do something about it part in my say it, own it, do something about it. And we'll talk about that when we get to that. But you can't just throw that out there about someone's personal hygiene and then not follow through with that, because the mental health goes along with that. So you have to make sure that you're really willing to follow through with that and show up for that person. Trust erodes, resentment builds, and people feel unclear if you're not clear on what you're saying and what you need done. So you have to really make sure that you put specific comments into those conversations with, I want you to do this, this, and this. So with her, it was specific. You need to shower every day before you come to work. You need to make sure that your uniform is clean when you come to work. You need to make sure that you put deodorant on. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole their personal beliefs in deodorant, because that might be a play too, but you have to know your audience, right? So if you have somebody that doesn't believe in deodorant, their natural habitat is what they live in, which is perfectly fine, then that's something you have to then, right, train the rest of your staff that that's their belief system and that's what they believe in and do. And then they have to respect that. So there's that another open conversation, a hard conversation is the rest of the staff. If that's their belief system that they don't wear deodorant, then that's where you need to open up to the rest of your staff and kind of play with that. So, so own it. Clarity requires ownership. You can't, it's always, I love my owner to death. And I know some of you on here are owners and practice managers. A lot of times you shift that conversation to somebody else and make them do it. Um, but, and that's fine. But the person who tells somebody that and owns up to it, they have to make sure that they really own that clarity. It tells people what matters, and it tells ownership tells people it's theirs. So you have to own what you're saying, but that person you're talking to has to own that they know what they have to do moving forward. Um, if your expectations are unclear, then you're going to continue to have the same problems. So you need to be clear on what you want to happen. It's just really one of the biggest problems is that you have conversations with people about what's underperforming or what's not accepted, what culture you want, but then you're not really clear on what to do moving forward, then that just makes it go back. And you're going to have to say it again in a couple months because you weren't clear on it. So you need to ask that question. Do you really understand what I'm saying? And have them repeat it back to you. With the one with the doctor, I had her repeat back to me everything she thought I wanted her to do moving forward. And you might think that that's a stupid thing to do or a waste of time to have them repeat back what you want. It's all going back to listening skills. Make sure they were listening to you and not just hearing you, is that they actually listen and they understand what you're saying and what they need to do to go forward. And if you are not sitting down with that person when you have an issue with somebody, you're just saying it out in the open or out, in the, because you don't have time to call them into your office and or call them into somewhere and have that conversation. You're doing a disservice to both of you. So you really need to make sure that they understand what you're asking of them. Huh. Um, so here's just an example. We're talking about callbacks here. If we said to the staff, we need to stay on top of callbacks. They're not getting callbacks done. And this is the only statement you say to them. We need to stay on top of callbacks. Well, then that's kind of broken. That really doesn't, yeah, you're saying that there's problems with callbacks and you need to stay on top of it, but you're not giving them any clarity and you're not giving them any ownership. So if you said you're responsible for client callbacks at the end of each day and I need them completed before you leave, then that's being clear and you're setting an ownership to them. They own that now. They have to do that before they leave. Now, when we get to the follow-up part, if you don't follow up on that, then it's gone, right? So you need to make sure that it's clear and it's ownership. So don't just say what first pops into your head. We need to stay on top of callbacks, or you need to make sure that everybody gets their cage cleaned. That's still vague. So you want to try to be really specific, is that you specifically are responsible for this job. I need it done by the end of the day, and it needs to be done before you leave. That's really clear and it keeps you online. Okay. Where we get stuck a lot of times is as we're not leading them is that we say it, we hope someone picks it up, and then we assume it's handled, as that word assume, and then we're frustrated when it's not right. We just, they didn't do it. We just, oh well. It's not about control. It's really about the clarity and accountability. You were saying it clearly and you're holding somebody accountable for it. It's not you controlling everything because you're giving them that job and you're making them own it. And then you're holding them accountable if they don't do it. It's different too. You can be clear about it, but you want to also make them believe you're leading them to get the job done correctly or the way that you want it. If you make everyone responsible for a job, then no one's responsible for a job, right? So it's really hard to make it acceptable. All right, so this is the three. What you don't address becomes the standard, right? The biggest breakdown breakdown I see with leaders isn't the clarity or the ownership, it's really the lack of follow through. I was really, when I first started out in my management supervisory roles, leadership roles, if you may, I don't consider that when I started out that I was a leader at all. I didn't start becoming a leader until I started realizing where my mistakes were and I started changing those. And then I started to see myself leading people instead of me just managing people. And this was easier for me in the veterinary world than it was in the parole world. Because in the government world, if any of you have ever worked for the government, they suck at making people um, be held accountable and making people want to do their jobs well and in leading people. They were really bad at that. They still are. But the lack of follow through is where we all fall short because we get busy. We have other things to do. We have more problems to address. We can't figure out what the time limit is to getting things done. So therefore we forget the follow through. The biggest thing for me with follow through is I always now, I guess it took me probably in my 20 some years of being a leader, I think it probably took me the first 10 into really managing my follow-up mistakes, I would have to say. Um, so the follow through for me is I always kept, I know everyone has sticky notes all over the place. I did that. And then when we have cell phones that were calendar focused, that I would put notes in my calendar note. But a lot of times where I really learned to lead people is I made the person I was putting that on to then have the ability that they were responsible for the follow up along with me, obviously. But I always said, you need to come back to me on this date and you need to tell me what your progress was. If you don't follow up, then you're missing the most important part in making sure that they understand what that was that they owned and that you were clear on to that they actually got it done. With the follow up also comes back to with you're reinforcing that ownership that they have. And then you are also acknowledging what they did right and praising what they did right, which the follow through is not to say you're still doing it wrong. It's to say what you have started to do right. Or if they got it all completely right, which is what we all hope, then you're praising them for that job that they did well and that they're learning to do better at their overall job. Because we all know praise is better than, punishment, right? We want to praise people as much as we can to get them to keep believing in themselves. So you want to make sure that you do something about it. You already said it, you already owned it, and now you're going to do something about it. Unaddressed behavior becomes accepted behavior. So this is where we talk about the culture, really. If you don't own it, you don't say it, you don't own it, and you don't do anything about it, then you're making this culture in your team that it's okay that they don't do what you need them to do. So you need to come back with it and say, I'm going to follow up. I'm going to check in. I'm going to reinforce expectations. I'm going to address it again if it needs to be addressed. A lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to let this go because it's not that big of a deal, or I'm too busy to handle it now. It doesn't mean that that's an okay behavior. It's not. You have to continue to make sure that you're following up and checking in with that person to make sure that they understand and you are clear enough on it. Because you might say something to them that they need to do it, like callbacks. You need to do it. A lot of times when I first started out in the vet world, obviously I did callbacks, hated them, but we did them. But then I never knew that a callback back when I started, that a callback could lead to so much more. My callback was really quick. I got in and out. I didn't do anything, but I missed a whole opportunity for me to get more services out there to see if they needed another pet looked at, to sell dog food, flea and tick treatment. I missed all that. So you need to be really saying to someone that you have to do your callbacks, I guarantee you that there's probably a lot of client service people out there that don't realize that that callbacks could be so much more and could bring your practice so much more because they're not, you only were saying do callbacks. To them, a callback might be just calling that person saying, hey, how's your pet? And then that's it. So you're missing a whole profit, really, because you're not following up, you're not being specific, you're not being clear. The clarity's not there, and they're not owning it. So you need to make sure you do that, check in and reinforce. And also, I think a lot of times as leaders, we forget to say, how would you do it differently? Or what do you think will work differently? So then you're missing the part where you could learn something from that, saying, how I always try to, when I was leading somebody in something, I would always go back and say, hey, what do you think I could do differently to make that this doesn't happen again to somebody else? How do I get better at leading you to make sure you know how to do your job? And I think that's something that we forget on that follow-up. We always kind of go back and say, okay, you're doing everything right now. That's great. Good for you. No big deal. But I always wanted to learn what I could do better to lead that person and to motivate them to do better. So my goal was never to make somebody stay in the same position they've always wanted to be in. My goal was always to motivate them to do more, to be more, and to learn more. So if you don't ask for the follow-up on you, then a lot of times you miss that opportunity where you can make somebody realize that they want to do more, they want to do something different. There was a lot of client service people, a lot of times they take the job just because they need a job and they don't really know what vet world can offer. And they don't see all the different ways that you can do different things in the vet world. And if you're not having those conversations with your team individually or all together, a lot of people in the vet world don't know how many opportunities are out there to move up, to educate themselves, to be better, to lead other people. And therefore, there you can catch people that they get promoted that they're not understanding what leading is. That makes sense. Like we were all promoted. A lot of us were promoted, not everyone was promoted without being led or not being trained how to lead. And in these little conversations that we have, that you're saying it, you're owning it, and you're doing something about it, you can also learn and teach at the same time, so that if they move up that chain, the people that are behind them that they're going to then lead can also learn those habits, and they'll know better what to do when they're leading a team. Is because you're having those conversations and those feedback with people and letting them understand how to lead by doing this kind of things. They're going to remember more that you were so clear and you owned it and you were candid with them. They're going to remember that when they have to go back and do that to somebody else when they lead a team. And that's what we should all be doing as leaders. Is obviously we want them to succeed. And I don't want anyone to ever go back into a management leadership position or supervisory position, whatever it is, whatever field you're in, and not saying to me that I helped them learn how to lead better. The biggest compliment I got throughout all of my years doing whatever job it was is that I helped someone learn how to lead better and to be more kind and understanding on how to do something, because I help them along the way. There's lots of people in the criminal justice in my parole world that I have trained people that were agents that are now supervisors, and they still comment that, you know what, you were a really good supervisor. You taught me a lot about how to lead a team instead of how to just manage a team. And that to me is the biggest compliment that I want. As an owner or a practice manager, that should be the biggest thing you want too. You want people to understand that you're not just doing your job, you are helping them and motivating them to one day hopefully lead their own team.
And real quick, and we've got a question, and maybe we just addressed it. Is there a couple of things that as a new manager, somebody new in the role, that they can focus on, little nuggets that they should be working on every day?
Oh, so as a new manager or as a hoping to be a new manager,
And already
or
in the role.
training,
We're a new manager.
you new manager. So the biggest thing for me is doing nothing. Like if you don't do anything, because I think that's what the biggest tidbit I learned over the years is that I can't do nothing. If there's a problem, I have to address it as soon as I can. And I think as new managers, we wait until we're absolutely forced to deal with that. So then therefore it gets bigger and bigger and we're not dealing with the initial issue anymore. We're dealing with a lot more, right? We've all seen it. If there's you don't want to you hesitate as a leader because you don't want to be annoying. You don't want to say, oh, I've already said that. You don't want to micromanaging. And what ends up happening with new hires too is that they end up doing the job. And I should say that with all managers. Been there. We all like to just go ahead and do the job. If somebody doesn't do it, I'll do it because I can do it better. And they don't delegate enough. So you really, as new managers, need to delegate jobs that you shouldn't be doing. And yes, we're all wonderful and we all think we're the only ones that can do it right. A lot of times there's not one way to do it. There's several ways to do it. It's just that you prefer to do it your way. So we have to actually start to let people do that job their way, and then you feed off of each other. A lot of times, one of the other biggest problems I see is a lot of people don't, as new managers, they don't sit down with the people they lead. They just continue to do their jobs. They do their task every day. They get everything done they're supposed to get done, but then they never go back and say to somebody, hey, what's going on today? How you doing? What's the issues? Because a lot of times you can get the issues out of people that way and figure out what's going on. And then you have the conversation about what we can fix and what we can't fix. I think a lot of people are afraid of asking the question, what's going on? What can we do to make it better? When I was the manager at the vet, because didn't know what I was doing at the vet practice, I went from being a receptionist to a practice manager without a lot of input. And I was just trying to get a new practice up and running. But one of the things I was really, really determined to do is what I knew as a practice manager, my whole team knew. So I was always big on in staff meetings. They knew what kind of stuff I had to do. They knew how much the Pico bill was, or the electric bill was. They knew how much our lease was for the building. I didn't hold anything back. There's no secret information that we can't share with our staff. And it made them understand what my job entailed also, which therefore had a conversation with what else a practice manager does and what else we have to handle. But I always wanted to know what they wanted to do, where their future was going, what they had planned, what they didn't like. Was there some practice or policy or procedure in the practice that they thought could go differently? And then we talked about that. As a practice manager, you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to think your way even as an owner, your way is not always the right way or the only way. Just because you're the owner, yeah, you pay all the bills, but sometimes getting your staff involved in stuff that you might think shouldn't be in their mindset or their jobs or whatever, they might come up with a better idea. We renovated our practice one time, and we renovated the front desk. And before, most people at the front desk, it was a small desk. Everybody sat behind it. You couldn't really see all that. We actually had the front staff design what they wanted in their front area, how they wanted it. The one thing that the owner wanted was they wanted people to stand up instead of sit down. And so we had higher desks put in, but then we also had low ones because the receptions were like, we need to sit down. We can't stand all day. Can't we have this? So having them have that feedback in there really helps with teaching them that the conversation goes both ways, right? One of the biggest thing with toxic for new hires and toxic employees is with new hires, we want to be liked and we don't want to be the bad person. So we try to be friends a lot of times with a lot of our staff, and not that you can't be friendly with them and not that you can't be friends with them, but they have to know that you have a line basically, and that you have to be the practice manager or the owner or the person that's dealing with that not so nice issue, but that you can be kind about it and that you can helpful about it. There's always going to be the fine line where you have to then discipline, and fire. Not saying that you should give 3 disciplines before you fire. We have to not be afraid to fire people, right? As new managers. So there are some of the things that you can do. Doing nothing also makes it that it doesn't really matter to you. If they don't think callbacks really matter to you, then they're not going to do callbacks. There was one time in my practice that it was, we made up this sheet that we needed people to fill out for cleaning. And we never did any, if somebody missed it or didn't fill it out, we never did anything. So then it started to be like within, I know we've all done this, we made a procedure and then we don't follow through and then it falls away. So that's exactly what happened. We had this list of when people should be filling this out, that they cleaned this specific area. And then, so then I never paid attention to it. So I didn't follow through with it. I left it alone. One day I went in there and it was a month after we started it and there was not one. The last time somebody put it in there was 2 weeks ago. So there was 2 weeks of nobody putting that they did it. And what did I do? I ignored it because I didn't have time. I was too busy. I was like, I don't have time for this. This is nothing. This is a little thing. Well, we were AHA accredited. And when we went back, because the area they were cleaning was the surgery room, then that's what they were supposed to be marking off. So then when we went back to get recertified as AHA, this came up again. Well, this room's not cleaned a certain way or whatever the standard was. I can't remember what it was. But it was something that we would have lost points on the AHA accreditation if we didn't. And they're like, well, we didn't think it mattered anymore because we haven't done the list and nobody said anything. So then I realized that's where my fault was, is I didn't own it enough, that I didn't follow through with it. I didn't do something about it. So therefore the culture was like, no, but we don't have to do it. So that's where as a leadership, you really have to, they didn't understand either what the significance of what that sign was. They didn't understand that because I didn't explain it either. I wasn't clear about why we were doing it. I just said you had to do it. So therefore it took us another probably 4 months then to get them to understand that this had to be done. And it took 4 months probably for me to go back and say, this isn't being done. Why isn't it being done? And I didn't take, it's not being not nice. I didn't take the part about not, I didn't discipline them, but that's the easiest word for me to put in there, is that I didn't address it every time. So every time somebody didn't do it, I addressed them directly that they didn't sign it. And that's what you have to do. Stop putting, another thing we do as managers is if we don't want to address a specific thing to a specific person, we say it at the staff meeting so that everybody hears it. And then everybody's like, oh, this is stupid. We all know JoJo doesn't do it. Why don't they talk specifically to JoJo? Why do they make everybody feel like we don't do our jobs because they're yelling at us in a staff meeting? And we all know that it's just this specific person that doesn't do it. So you need to address that person specifically. Stop making it everybody's problem when you know it's one person's problem. This is basically a lesson, but not really a lesson. It's you can't want it more than they do, right? And you don't carry it for them. Meaning a lot of practice managers, owners then do the job. Like I went back to saying that they're the ones that do it and you don't do it. So then we just go ahead and do it and we really make it about us and not about them. If you wish that somebody's going to start helping you and lead and go forward, then you need to make sure that you don't want it more than they do. If there's a person that you're working with that's on your team that you really want them to succeed, but they're like, I don't really want to do that. This is not where I am. Stop making it about you and make it more about them. If that's not the job for them, like if they're only there because they want a paycheck, then you have to really think about, is that the type of person you want on your team? Is that really where they want to be? So don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up in doing it for you. callback thing, if you keep reminding them, checking it constantly, stepping in to finish it, who actually owns it then? You're not, that person's not owning it, that you told to do it. You own it now instead of them owning it. So it's just something to think of. How much of our job responsibilities or our job in general are we taking over? Are we owning it ourselves instead of making them own that? So you don't want to make it that you own everything and then you really um, aren't teaching them anything. Consistency is what turns the conversation into change. So if you're not consistent about it and on top of it, then it's just going to get thrown to the wayside. Nobody's going to change it because they know you're going to come behind them and do it. How many people have heard that in their own practice? Is you say somebody, oh, make sure you do this. Oh, don't worry about that. So and so always does that. And you know that it's not so and so's job to do that, but you know, or the only person's job to do that, but you let it go so far that that person's now responsible for it and they own it when necessarily it should be the whole team that owns it, not just one person that owns it. So you want to make sure of that. If it's one person that owns it and they're supposed to be doing it, then that's fine and dandy. But if it's a job where any one of the technicians should be doing it, then you want to make sure that's clear that so and so doesn't get put to do it every day just because everybody knows she'll do it or he'll do it. So you need to be clear about that with your whole team, not just the persons that you're talking to about it. So we want to make sure that we say we own it and we do something about it. We don't want to just do one of them where we just say it and we don't follow through with it and we don't own it. We want to make sure that everybody gets it and that we do it and that we don't avoid the conversations. We don't soften it. We don't hope it fixes itself, that we just really sit down and say it, own it, and do something about it. So what are you avoiding in your practices? Where are you falling behind that you're not doing something about it, that you're not leading with it? Is there something out there that you're just not doing? You're avoiding that conversation because you don't know how to do it? It's probably most people avoid the one that matters the most. So does anyone have a situation they're currently avoiding that want to talk about it?
I know that they do.
There's gotta be.
Safe space, y'all. I think that this is a good time. It's always nice, I think, to just have kind of some scripts, right? To hear how somebody else would say it, and then kind of go from there. Oh, look, we've got a raised hand.
You might be offending him, but he's offending everybody else right now, right?
Yeah, and making it
Yeah.
hard to work around.
Yeah, so you, and maybe this is my harshness from being in criminal justice for 30 years, but who cares if you're offending him? In all honesty, and this is the problem, that we're so nice. You can say it, you have to say it kindly, but you still have the right to say it. Just because somebody doesn't think they're offending everybody else, and you can say that. Say how you smell offends other team members that work with us. And
Okay.
and it's just obviously you got the one thing you have to watch when we have these candid conversations too is your tone. So you don't want to go in there and say you stink, and although you really want to, that and nobody else can work with you, can, and it's okay to say some of your coworkers have come to me and they've expressed some concern over your body odor, and we really you we don't know if you notice that you smell, but we notice that you smell. And we would like to make sure that you fix that situation because it's starting to bring attention to clients and other staff members. And we don't want you to be embarrassed by that if
Mhm.
somebody says something. So that's why we want to have that conversation before somebody else says it to you in an unnice way. Then the conversation gets a little bit more direct, like, And that one might be where for the doctor, we gave her a basket of personal hygiene stuff. So
Right.
you didn't say to him, we're giving you these things because you have a body odor that a lot of people are starting to notice. And we would
Right.
like you to fix that. If it doesn't fix and we continue to get complaints, then we're going to have sit down again and have another conversation, which might not come to a positive outcome.
Okay.
Can you fire somebody for body odor? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a legal issue, but I mean, I would think you can and you should because you're then giving him a way out. But do you want to fire somebody just based of that? Then it might become a conversation. If he gets to that point where there's no recourse, then it might be having a conversation with the people that are having an issue with it. If it's
Right.
not everybody and only certain people, you might have to say this is, and he might come back to you and say, I like how my body smells. Then what are you going to say?
Yeah.
And it might be an issue, a medical issue, which then you can also say to him, have you been to the doctors? Have you discussed it with your doctor? Not getting into say, I don't want to know specifics, obviously, but that
Right.
might be a conversation with maybe you should get looked at by a doctor because I don't want it to be something that you have to handle medically. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Good luck.
Don't you have you ever asked her how she wants feedback given? Then did you say that though?
I didn't. No, I did not.
You have to be candid. You are now just sugarcoating how you talk to them because you don't want their feelings hurt. But
Right.
then you still don't know how you can communicate with them without hurting their feelings. So you have to be really candid with them and say, listen, I have tried to be direct with you about our feedback, and then you turn around and tell everyone else that I'm being mean. You have to call them on the carpet on that because it's getting back to you. And so obviously you don't want the other staff to be put in the middle, which is what's exactly happening right now is your other staff is put in the middle because they're saying one thing and you're saying another thing. So you have to be really candid with them and say, hey, you say you like direct feedback, but you don't. You're not getting the criticism. So how can we do this so that you don't feel like I'm harping on you, but that we need to make sure that this job's done correctly and that we move forward from there. And if they continue to do the same things they're doing, then why are they still at your practice?
Right. Yeah.
Because now it's just a toxic environment because now they're telling everybody that you're being the mean one when
Right.
you're not trying to be the mean one, but this is how they're
Right.
doing it. They're seeing you back away from that confrontation, and I don't want to say
Yeah.
confrontation because you're not, but they see
Yeah.
you backing away from that situation. So you're showing them that you're doing it. So then you're creating that culture that they're going to let these people go without giving them feedback.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be the candid one and say, no, you said you like direct contact, direct whatever feedback.
Yeah.
And I'm giving it to you, but you don't like it. So obviously you have to tell me how else you want me to give you feedback because now the other staff don't feel comfortable giving you feedback because they think that you are going to start crying or saying that we're mean. So we need to figure out how we're going to communicate better so that we're both getting what we need out of this situation. I think as a society, we're so afraid to say what we
Yeah.
need to say because
Yeah.
we're afraid that we're going to hurt somebody's feelings. And
Sure.
we
Yeah.
really need to get out of that headspace because the only thing you're hurting at this point is your practice.
Agreed. Agreed. Yes.
So,
Yep.
There are a couple more
Hopefully that
questions that
helps.
came through, and I'm sorry because we're out of time, so I will have Kim answer those offline. I appreciate everyone. Just real quick, this is recorded, right? So it'll be up on our YouTube channel. You can find it, share it with whoever you need to. Next month, we switch things up a little bit in the summer, so we move our webinars to Wednesday. So Wednesday, June 10th, we'll have lawyers Peter Tanella and Brent Pullman covering practical strategies for retaining associates, navigating owner transactions, HR risks, growth, AI, all of those kind of things. Those legal conversations that we have that make our tummies hurt. So that'll be a good one. Kim, love you as always. You guys, she's always available. She's a great consulting coach. This is where you can find her. We will share those questions with you guys and then appreciate you for being here. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah. Thank you guys. It's nice being here.